Welcome to Transit Unplugged. I'm your host, Paul Comfort. And today we've got a special treat for you. The CEO of Los Angeles Metro, Phil Washington. LA Metro is the second largest transit system in America behind New York City. He represents transit in the largest county in America of Los Angeles. Phil Washington's become a good friend of mine and is one of the top leaders and most respected leaders in our country today when it comes to public transportation. On today's episode, we talked to him about his transit agency and some of the developments that are going on with the new school that he's developing. That's right, he's developing a high school for students to train them in transportation. It's going to be an amazing thing. Nothing else like it is happening in America or anywhere in the world, as far as I know. We also talk about the coronavirus pandemic and their response to it in LA, how much money they got through the federal stimulus package, and how long that will last. Hint, not long. And we also talk about some other amazing developments, capital programs that are still going on there in the Los Angeles area by one of the most respected leaders of one of the largest transit systems in the world, and clearly the largest transit system in America, representing a county that big of Los Angeles County. You're going to love this interview with Phil Washington, my good friend and leader of our transit industry. Enjoy.
What does it mean to be a successful public transit agency? What are you doing to lead the way? It's time to learn from the top transit professionals in North America. This is Transit Unplugged with your host, Paul Comfort.
All right, I'm with Phil Washington, leader of one of our nation's largest transit systems, LA Metro, CEO of that, who also runs the roads and all kinds of things in LA. Phil, thanks so much for being with us today on the podcast.
Well, thank you, Paul. It's great to be here, and thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you so much. So I guess I always like to start off with, tell us a little bit about the scope of your responsibilities and your agency and what it is you all do in Los Angeles, California.
Well, we are responsible. We are the builder, the funder, the planner, and the operator for the largest county in America, a county of 10 plus million people. We have 11,000 employees. And we are governed by a 13-member board of directors that includes the county, all 5 county supervisors, the mayor of Los Angeles, and other mayors in and around the county. So large operation. We carry on a normal weekday, pre-COVID, I should say, about 1.3 million people a day. We also have an express toll operation. We fund highway, as you mentioned a minute ago, we fund highway improvements. So we do everything that is really surface transportation here in LA County.
You know, you mentioned the mayor of Los Angeles. I got to hear him speak at an event you had out there, and I was very impressed with Eric Garcetti, right? Yes,
Eric Garcetti, yeah.
Yeah, it was a commotion event that was held out in LA, and I was just, this guy's got his finger on the pulse of what we need for transit, I think. So you're very blessed to have somebody like there who understands and values public transit.
Absolutely. He's been a wonderful advocate and a supporter of transit, and not just transit here in LA County, but nationally. He is very, very active with the mayors of the country, and I believe he's still the vice chair of mobility and transportation for the mayors all over the United States. So it's a big deal. He's great.
Before we get into COVID, could you give me a quick update? One of the most impressive things I think that you've done in your role there as head of the transit system is the school that you were working on for young people to kind of, help get them interested in public transportation. Could you give our listeners an update on what you've been doing there?
Yes, this is something that's very, very important to me and to us, to my board as well. So we have always thought that we need to grow our own in the transportation infrastructure space. I've always been concerned about the shortage of labor in the transportation infrastructure space, whether that is building or operating our infrastructure here in LA County and the rest of the country. And so we built a career pathway model that I call sort of a cradle to grave model that can allow a person to matriculate all the way through the transportation infrastructure industry, all the way up to CEO or executive. And the one thing we were missing in that cradle to grave approach was hitting the kids, before they become intern age and all of that, college intern age. And
Right.
So our thought was to start a school. And so that school is designed grades 9 to 12, a boarding school concept that really focuses on transportation infrastructure, prioritizes the kids in the foster care system, low income kids whose parents have been exposed or engaged in the criminal justice system. And having these kids in a school in South Los Angeles, in the middle of an urban area, and teach them and create a curriculum about transportation infrastructure. So we're going to break ground on that school in August or September. We already have the land. We have $150 million between LA Metro and the county for the first 15 years operating funds. So we're well on our way to creating what I call Los Angeles as the center of transportation excellence in this country.
And what grades will be in that school?
Grades 9 to 12. We will start with the ninth grade the first year when the school is built. And we're building this from the ground up. There will be a supermarket in what is otherwise a food desert in South Central LA. We are looking at affordable housing right there on that school area, plus a training center for the community and a transit plaza, because the site of the school we have a major bus rapid transit project that we're working on. So it's a major thoroughfare here in Los Angeles. So we're very, very excited about it. And we'll add a grade each year.
Oh, like going down like 8th, 7th, 6th kind of a thing?
Well, we'll start with ninth graders. And then the next year, those ninth graders will be 10th graders. And
I see.
Another ninth grade class.
Oh, that's really good.
482 kids when it's all said and done in a 4-year school.
And will it be managed by the Board of Ed or managed by you all, or a joint effort?
We have a contractor who will run the school, and that contractor we have already selected. It's called the Seed Foundation, and they will run the school. They have an arrangement through the county with us as providing oversight as well.
And so the curriculum for these high school students, tell me a little bit about that, what the game plan is. Like, it'll be a little maybe bridge engineering or what kind of stuff we're talking about here?
We help design the curriculum with the contractor. It will be engineering. It will be planning, going through the planning process, environmental, NEPA, CEQA. I mean, all of these things. I can't wait to have a 14 or 15-year-old talking to me about the NEPA process. Isn't it something?
Yeah, NTD reporting, right?
Right, yeah. So, it's going to be fun. But we designed the curriculum, and this is teaching kids about public-private partnerships. This is teaching kids about how we should be looking to transfer risk to the private sector, and talking about how funding is set up on these various projects, and of course the maintenance piece, the maintenance and all of that. So this is going to be incredible, and these kids will enter that career pathway. So when they graduate from high school, they will enter into the next stage of the career pathway, that is internships at various government institutions, not just LA Metro, but water, the aviation space.
Oh, wow.
And with contractors that are doing work with us, we will require them, just like a small business goal, to take some of these kids on. So it's exciting. I mean, these kids are going to be graduating, going right into the transportation infrastructure industry and space.
Wow, that's just amazing. I can't tell you how excited I am about that. It's just, there's nothing else. I've never heard or seen anything like this anywhere in the world. And, I just commend you so much and the foresight of you and your leadership team there to come up with something like this. I mean, just phenomenal on so many levels. Just the other big thing that I've worked on it. As you know, I've been an elected official here in Maryland, out on the East Coast. And one of the big things I was pushing for was not every kid has to go to college. We need to create a good career path for young people where they can go right from high school into the trades and now also into transportation, but be well trained. So it's phenomenal.
Absolutely.
If you ever need a guest lecturer for any of the classes, I volunteer. Come in.
We will tap you for that because we're going to have assemblies. You remember assemblies?
Oh yeah.
So I couldn't wait for an assembly so I could get out of class.
That's
so
right. Yeah. I just saw a comedian talking about that this week about assemblies. Hey, so, again, before we get into COVID and all, you have so many amazing capital projects you're working on, and I know you're continuing to do so even during this COVID era. Can you tell us about, Measure M and kind of the status of these 45 or whatever big projects you've got going, and just kind of an overview of that, where we're at on all that?
Yeah, we have the largest capital program in North America. And, I heard Peter Rogoff, my friend, say he had the largest one up in Seattle. I beg to differ. Yeah, we have the largest one in North America. And what makes ours the largest in North America is, one, the projects, of course, that we have in our schedule, 18 projects, major projects, multi-billion-dollar projects in the first 15 years of this measure and 40 in the first 40 years. So not only do those mega projects make us the largest, but the fact that we have no sunset and this sales tax, at least Measure M, does not end unless voters decide to end it, really make us the largest because this thing will go on and on and on. You can't build something and not maintain it, which is the reasoning and the justification that we went out to voters, and voters understood that, which is why we have no sunset. But the projects that we are building now are going to change the face of Los Angeles. We have one mega project, the largest, is something called the Sepulveda Pass, which is through the mountains of Sepulveda Pass. And this will likely be an underground subway rail line through the mountains, likely, or aerial. We'll look at all kinds of innovative approaches. And so that is one. We are building also an airport where rail will connect to the airport. We're building that right now. We're building a line out west through UCLA and to the VA hospital on the west side that is really caring for our military veterans. There are more military veterans in the state of California than any other state. And I'm a military veteran myself. So,
right.
So all of these projects, the Sepulveda Pass project that I mentioned, that project is really of regional and national significance. And I think I point to two projects, not to undercut any other projects around the country, but I equate that Sepulveda Pass project that will go from the northern stretches of LA County all the way down to the airport eventually, a total of probably about 30 miles or so. It is the most congested corridor in terms of cars in America.
Wow.
And so I equate that project in its significance to the Gateway Project in New York. And I think when you start thinking about mega transportation projects, you point to those two that really have regional and national significance. So we're managing now about $20 billion in projects right now, with another dozen or so that's coming online in the next 3 years or so.
Has the COVID-19 crisis slowed any of those down, or are you slowing down on any of your other projects, capital projects, as a result of it?
Well, yes, a lot of this will be deferred for a little bit as we study this thing. Now, we know that sales tax revenue is the primary source of all of our revenue. And so with the stay-at-home order and people actually abiding by the stay-at-home order, well, it stands to reason people are not buying stuff.
Right.
And so that is impacting our sales tax revenue. We are looking at sort of a 6-month period to start with and looking at the impacts of the COVID-19 over that 6 months. And what we see just preliminarily is a loss of about $800 million just on sales tax alone. Obviously, this is a large county, the largest in America. And so when you start thinking about the revenues that are generated through sales tax, it's pretty incredible. So we're looking at about $800 million in losses over between now and September, or when this started, let's say March 1 and September 30th. We're also looking at, we've had huge ridership declines. So in farebox revenue, we're looking at between $19 and $23 million in losses from farebox revenue. So when you add both those things, we have massive losses. But at the same time, we are thinking about recovery. We are standing up a recovery and restoration task force.
That's wonderful.
And we are doing that right now because we believe that we are looking right now at the new normal. The new normal, read an article last week where folks were saying they had not seen this clean of the LA air since 1980 or something.
Right. I read that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're looking at things that, unfortunately, are a result of COVID-19. But how many of these things can we adopt permanently, even in the midst of this COVID-19? So part of that recovery is to look at what new tools or approaches, clean air, less congestion, fewer accidents, fewer fatalities on the road, rear door boarding, how we deal with the homeless. All of these things we're looking at to see how we can adopt some of these things in our permanent sort of recovery mode. So we're excited about that, even in the midst of this pandemic.
That's wonderful. I'd like to actually talk a little about those in just a moment, but back to the beginning of your conversation about the funding levels, having sales tax. And of course, across America, many agencies are in the same boat as you are in that they rely so heavily on sales tax to fund their operating dollars. So is the federal funding that's coming out of Washington as part of the $2 trillion stimulus, they provided $25 billion to transit and about 23 of that to urban areas. How is that going to assist you, do you think? Is it enough? And how long do you think it will last? How much did you get? Those kind of things.
Well, preliminarily, now we know that this will be distributed using the existing 5307 formulaic program, but the revenue loss that we are experiencing is permanent. We're not going to make that up. It's going to significantly stunt our projects moving forward. So as I understand the 5307 program, this money is primarily operational money. It's going to go to the operations losses, if you will.
Yes. Kind of make it up. Yeah,
that's right. And so we are looking at about $1 billion from the CARE Act stimulus.
Okay.
Now, and that sounds like a lot of money, but
but you already said you're going to be down $800 million by October, right?
Right. That's right. And we are, as you know, when we talked at the beginning about what we are responsible for, we are a funder as well. So now we have to divvy out money to the 17 smaller muni bus operators in LA County. We also have to fund the commuter rail operation. We talk about $1 billion, but we are affectionately known as Mother Metro as well. So we're going to be divvying out a lot of that. So I've told my board that our losses will exceed anything we get out of the CARES program. We know that. I know that. And we're going to have to make some tough decisions on where that money goes. And it's primarily to operations. And so if that is the case, then our projects out there with Measure M and all of that are going to be looking at deferrals.
Interesting. So I just heard today from a colleague overseas who was looking at the raw data from Wuhan, China's ridership of their public transit system. And you may have seen my colleague David Zipper, who is a visiting fellow at Harvard, had done an article last week, and I've talked to him as we're working on an article together on how to recover, and some of the comments that you make today on this podcast, I think I'll include there, how American transit systems are recovering. About 3 weeks ago, they were at 65% of their normal ridership on public transit in Wuhan. And as of this week, they're up to 80%. And they do have in place a requirement for everybody to wear a mask. And they're also having them, which I have a little concern about, my libertarian side of me, that everybody has their own QR code, and they're having to tap it when they get on the bus so they can track who's going where and to see if you've been in contact with someone who had it. But to me, the overall number of 80%, only a month post-pandemic, is a positive sign. And these are actual, he's getting the raw data feed from them. So it's not, propaganda, I don't think. Do you have any thoughts on that, on the recovery? I mean, personally, I think that the commuter services are going to be who have been hardest hit. I was just talking with Kevin Quinn this morning from MTA in Maryland, and he said some of their bus routes are down to 3% of their regular ridership, their commuter bus routes, 97% reduction in ridership, because people just are all working from home. And I have a feeling that a lot of companies will say, you know what? I think instead of coming into the office every day, you can probably come in, 2 or 3 times a week, and we've figured out how to make this kind of telecommuting thing work. I can reduce the amount of rented office space. We can do shared space when you get in, those kind of things, and that will have a longer term impact. Whereas on regular public transit, light rail, subways, I think a lot of folks need that service, and they're going to have to come back on it. I mean, any general thoughts from you on that topic?
Well, yeah, I mean, all the above that you just mentioned. I mean, so I think it's going to be a mix of things, right? This new normal, this new mobility normal, I think will be more folks working from home. It's also going to be, I think, a change in travel patterns. So a lot of people will say, you know what, I'm not going to go in during the typical peak period of 7 or 7:30. I'm coming in at 10.
Where there's less people on the bus.
Less people on the bus and on the train. So, I mean, what does that do for our peak periods, right? I think that it's going to be a mix of people having to come back because they need to come back because of what could be a recession that comes out of this. So people are going to lose their jobs. And so you're still going to have that. There's going to be a slow recovery of the economy, and restaurants are going to be slow, I think, to bring people back because people are going to be slow to go out to restaurant and movies and
sporting events
and all these big crowds. So I think it's going to be a mix. I do think eventually people will come back, but just culturally now, what does that mean with regard to social distancing on our buses and trains? I mean, in Wuhan, it's a whole different kind of culture going on, with people and all of that. So I'm interested, and I've asked our recovery team to look at how we ramp service back up, because we're not going to wake up one day and put all the service back out on that next day. Right. We're going to ramp up in a very, very deliberate way and open things up incrementally as we go. And so this is going to be interesting, because does the social distancing police show up to check our buses? And does that become some sort of performance measure, the social distancing performance measure now? I don't know. So people are going to be very antsy about coming back. But what we do know, and this has nothing to do with transit, but I was thinking about this the other day and I was talking to somebody. You know what? People need people. And I can understand now, when you talk about social distancing and all that, people feel alone in big places now. And I can understand now why Adam needed Eve.
Yeah.
And I can actually understand why Eve was created because man needed a companion. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean, so
God has made us social creatures, as they say,
We're social animals. Yeah. But back to transit.
Yeah, no. Well, it's a very valid point. A couple thoughts. I'd like your input on this. So, staying on that theme, it's almost like, in ancient Israel, they had what was called a year of Jubilee once every 50 years, where they would push the reset button. All the property went back to the original owners. People wouldn't work the land anymore that year. They just ate the crops that came out of the field. Debts were forgiven. And it has a feeling like that for me. I don't, none of us like having to be kind of closed in and kept at home, where the well are quarantined, whereas normally in past pandemics, it's been the sick that are quarantined. But to prevent the spread, we've had the social distancing theory implemented. But it is an opportunity to kind of pause and reflect about what needs to come next. I was talking with Inez Evans earlier today from Indigo, the CEO there. Yeah. And she was saying that, Paul, we had some plans for some things we wanted to do, but maybe the ridership levels won't be there to support it. And are the feds going to say something about that, And so other people were in the midst of doing a bus network rebooting and changing the routes where people wanted to go. And like you said, people's behaviors might change. They may spread out the times that they want to ride. And so we may need to, so what are your thoughts on that as a moment to pause and reflect and reorient toward what a new normal might be? Any other thoughts on that?
I agree with you. I would say that, I hate doing it because of COVID-19, because people, are unfortunately dying and sick. I hate the reason we're doing it, but I do believe that there should be sort of a relook every so often. I mean, we were one of those agencies that were doing our next gen reboot of our entire system, a massive effort, a 2-year effort, wiping the slate clean in terms of the service and the routes and everything that we've done in the past. And I know that my friend Tom Lambert in Houston sort of kicked it off in Houston. So we're doing the same thing on a much larger scale. But I do think that there should be a reboot. And, unfortunately, we're doing it under these circumstances. But some of the considerations, the reduction considerations that we're doing now, I mean, we're looking at a hiring freeze. We're looking at eliminating agency-wide overtime. We're looking at our contingent workforce. We're looking at all of these things. And I think sometimes we have to do that. We have to take a look at our entire system and do a reboot.
That's good. As we close today, maybe talk about your people and the employees and kind of a message of hope and for our industry as a whole. You really are now with Andy gone in New York, you're the longest tenured, top CEO in our industry. Any thoughts for the industry as a whole as we move out of this?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I hate the distinction of being the longest tenured. I don't know what that's my future, but no, well, first of all, I think the understanding and recognizing the importance of our frontline folks, and that is not just transit's frontline folks, but how about the healthcare folks?
Yeah, how about it?
That, oh my God, I mean, the nurses and the doctors, and how about the folks that's working in the supermarket? Our economy is built on those frontline folks, and transit is moving those frontline folks, which makes us the foundation of the foundation. And so I think this idea, if we did not appreciate our frontline folks now, then my God, we ought to in a big, big way. And I think I point to them, and I've said to all of my 11,000 employees that I have 2 priorities right now in this COVID-19 scenario and calamity that we're going through. One is to make sure the system is safe for our riders. And the second is to make sure that there is as little as possible impact on my workforce. And what does that mean? That means my first priority is to preserve jobs in this agency. And I am unapologetic about articulating those two priorities. I don't want to lay anybody off, and I don't want to furlough nobody. I understand what it means to pay a mortgage and to go grocery shopping. We've got food lines out here, and I'm sure it's especially back east, it's incredible. Economists are predicting 20% unemployment in this country. And so those are my two top priorities. And I told my entire workforce just that yesterday. That is my priority, to preserve jobs, preserve the workforce. And that is probably my top priority, along with ensuring a safe system for our riders.
That's wonderful. What a great message. And I think, as you kind of so eloquently said, our frontline troops in the transit industry and in the medical industry and in the other essential services have really become our new American heroes.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Thank you, Phil Washington, for being with us today on this special Transit Unplugged podcast. And thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Paul.
You've been listening to Transit Unplugged, powered by Trapeze Group. To stay up to date, subscribe on iTunes or Google Play, or join the conversation at transitunplugged.com. Thanks for listening.